Hey everyone, it is Steve Cook, and I just wanted to come to you with something that I feel is going to take some of the things that we have been dealing with or doing with Lifeonaire over the years and really taking it to a new level. I'm going to refer to this as the rhythm of life. Now, this is a term that I was just made aware of here recently. I heard somebody else bring it up, but they were actually having a discussion on rules of life, and rules of life is very similar to the things that we have been doing with Lifeonaire. If you recall some of the stories that we tell, and a Lifeonaire principle is, hey, set yourself up to win, write the rules, change the rules of the game so that you can win. And, we talk about our visions, and, we create these rules around our vision that help us to live life. And throughout the years, I have met people who are somewhat resistant toward that, just the idea of having rules. There's some people who immediately just get resistant and they don't embrace that. In addition to that, we pull out the calendar, and, for some people, they just fully embrace that calendar exercise, and they see that calendar, and that's when they have their aha, like, oh my gosh, something needs to change in my life because I am just so busy. If there's any possibility of me living and experiencing an abundant life, something has to change. And so, there's a lot of people who they look at that calendar, and while some embrace it, there's others who like, oh my gosh, that seems so rigid. I can't really go there. And the thought of, sort of pre-planning this and saying this is what my calendar is going to look like, or it looks nothing like what I want it to look like. And, it bothers me just to even think about putting something down on a calendar that's probably not going to come true for me. And so they resist doing it when, in fact, it can come through. And so I wanted to just share something new, just maybe a new perspective. And I really do want to see some of the conversations that we have at Lifeonaire begin to start changing as to how we look at this. And we're going to be using the term, you'll hear me using it quite a bit more, and I'm going to refer to it as rhythms of life. Now, let's just talk real quickly about living out our vision. Our vision, as we know, and you've all heard this, it's a living and growing document. It's something that's going to grow with you as you are transformed into a different person. As your life is transforming, your vision grows. It's not a destination. We don't get there. We don't just arrive. We move closer to our vision, but then our vision grows with us. And if you have the tendency to look at your vision as something that you attain, that you've arrived, you can end up disappointed soon thereafter. A year or two later, you might start to feel like, I've already arrived and this is the way life's going to be forever. And you might end up bored, or you might find out that life begins to start to take over and the vision that you were living, you're no longer living. And it's because you felt like you arrived. And the fact of the matter is this: life does life. Life changes. You are transformed. You are growing. Your relationships are growing. And along with that, life changes. And there's new things that are brought in. And so I don't want you any longer to look at, I'm trying to attain this way of life. What you're trying to do is maintain this way of life. Once we get to that point where maybe we felt like we arrived, well, we have to shift into maintenance mode. But the reality of the situation is, even to get to that point in the first place, we need to maintain a rhythm of life to move us in that direction. And once we are to a point where we're really satisfied with the way life is, we need to continue to maintain that rhythm of life so that we continue to experience that. Because life does take over. It can come back in and start cluttering things back up again. And we need that maintenance to keep it on track. And so rhythms of life are basically the little things that we do. And listen to me, everyone. These things, when we pull out these calendars or these different disciplines that we might incorporate into our life to help us move in that direction and to live and experience the life that we want to live, these are supposed to be life-giving disciplines. These are disciplines that you should be excited about. Maybe there's a little tension, maybe in doing something new that you haven't done. But if there's something that just feels awful, like, the thought of putting rules in place, or, having to create a calendar that I'm going to live by, it just feels like a weight to me. If it's robbing you of life, it's not something that you should be doing, but there are rhythms that we want to incorporate, and your life isn't going to change without changing some of the rhythms that you do. You all have rhythms. You have a rhythm of life right now that isn't necessarily serving you the way that you want it to serve you, and you might need to change those rhythms so it begins to move your life in a different direction. It will change the trajectory of where you are going. And so for me, many of those rhythms come in the forms of spiritual disciplines. For me, my greatest desire is to grow more into the image of Jesus Christ. And so there are certain disciplines that I need to incorporate in the rhythm of life of how I make that happen. And, from my quiet times in the morning to a prayer of just really examining myself and, what was my previous day like? How could I have done things in a more Christ-like manner, or reading my Bible and memorizing scripture and studying it and hoping that becomes a real big part of who I am. But, continuously inquiring of the Lord, how do I use this to be a better person and to make a difference in the world? Just as one example, that is so important to me. Waking up in the morning, I get excited about going down, and part of my rhythm is my cup of coffee. I want to make my cup of coffee, and I want to sit down with my Bible and just really just spend some time with Jesus and allow him to come into me and to transform me and to transform my life. And so that's a very important rhythm. And much of what people see in me, if there's anything that you find attractive in me from the perspective of how the way I live my life, it's a result of those rhythms. It is the times that I spend, just the times of resting in the Word, and times of being in prayer and really being quiet, trying to hear from God. And when he impresses something upon my heart, I take action with that, and I begin to move in those directions. And some other rhythms that something that's a real practice for me in my life is that we have dinner together as a family. As often as we possibly can. My kids' schedules are getting busy now. We don't get to sit down at the dinner table every single day the way that we once used to, but still 4 or 5 times a week we're getting together as a family, sitting down, and we're having dinner. And during that time we're talking as a family, but we're doing devotions, and I'm teaching my boys how to study the Bible while we're having dinner together. And so we do that together as a family, and that's a rhythm that we do, and it's something that I thoroughly enjoy doing, but it's just become a part of life. And so, my work has a rhythm to it, and there's I contain the amount of time that I put into work, but I work really hard in that time, and I give my all to it. But I also have boundaries in place that allow me to be a dad and to be a coach and to do the kinds of things, maybe volunteering at my kid's school or something like that. But these rhythms, not rules, rhythms of life are something that we all have. And if there's changes that we want to see, simply changing the rhythms of life are the things that will help us to get there. Now, so I want to put out something else that, and this is a term that I had just heard last week. Consistency is better than intensity. And sometimes when we get into this process, those who embrace it might want to get really intense, and they want to do a whole lot of stuff. And I'm going to do, this every morning, and I'm going to do this in the afternoon, and I'm going to do this in the evening, and I'm going to start running 3 miles a day, and there's this intensity that they want to approach this with. And the problem is most people can't maintain that intensity. And so shortly into it, and this is what happens with New Year's resolutions, people give up on them because they're approaching it with too much intensity. And then once they can't maintain that, they maybe start to feel shame, they start to feel guilty, they just give up on it, and then they don't pursue it at all. Consistency is the key. So rhythms of life, along with a consistency in living out those rhythms of life is what's going to change and transform your life. And so why is consistency important, and why should we have that discussion, is because we don't want to make things too difficult. There may be some things where you do need to be really intense with. Your marriage is really struggling. You've got to be intense and jump in there and begin to start working on your marriage. But the little things that you need to do, and I say little because they shouldn't be difficult, as you are establishing a new rhythm, take little things and do them on a consistent basis. And as you do them consistently, your capacity to do more will begin to grow, and you can do more. So, I don't want to see people who aren't runners say, I'm going to start running 3 miles a day. I want to see you say, I'm going to walk around the block one time, and I'm going to be consistent with doing that every day. And then you might say, well, I'm going to walk around the block 2 times after you've done it for 3 or 4 months. And then you might say, well, I'm going to start jogging around the block 2 times. But that might be 6 months or a year down the road before you elevate to that level. But what you want to do is allow the rhythm to start saying, hey, you're ready for more. But you've got to establish a consistency and not at the expense of intensity. So rhythms of life are all about establishing a consistent routine that transforms your life. In my new coaching group, the M Cubed coaching group, we're going to really be focused on developing a one thing, a spiritual discipline that works for each and every person. It's not going to be the same for everybody. We're all unique. But I want everyone to develop a spiritual discipline that they are passionate about, that they can consistently do on a regular basis. And it needs to be simple. But here's my philosophy with that. You can be very intense, and you can try to employ a half a dozen new spiritual disciplines in hopes that it will transform your life. But I can tell you that most people will fail with that because it's just too much, and they're being too intense, and they're taking on way too many things at one time. However, if you can consistently employ one spiritual discipline and do a great job with it and do really, really good with it, that one thing will begin to change your life, and it will affect many other parts of your life. It will overflow into different things. And along with that, you're probably going to realize that you have an increased capacity to do more. And it's when you realize that you have that increased capacity to do more that maybe you will take on something else or modify the thing you're doing to add a little more intensity to it. But you wait until the transformation has already started to take place with the consistent rhythm that you've already been employing. And so rhythms of life, a new perspective, a new way of looking at things, your calendar, the disciplines that you're putting in place need to be life-giving. And there's a way to do all of this stuff and make it life-giving for you. My goal is not to clone everybody or to put everybody in a box and tell everybody that we need to do it a certain way. Anybody who's been around me for a long time knows that I celebrate the uniqueness of each and every person. And I love to meet people right where they are at right now and help them to develop their own patterns and their own routines and their own plan for living and experiencing an abundant life. And so I pray that you find some fruit in this, that you develop a rhythm for your life or rhythms for your life that begin to transform the way you live and experience life, and that you get to experience it more fully. Have a blessed day.